Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we're focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to Drive On. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and today my guest is Kate Horrell. Kate is a personal financial educator specializing in empowering military and veteran family members to optimize their pay and benefits. Her experience lies in helping individuals navigate the complexities of managing finances during and after military service, with a particular focus on the transition process and leveraging the post 9/11 GI Bill for educational opportunities, which we'll be talking about in just a minute. But first, I want to welcome you to the show, Kate. I'm really glad to have you here.
Thanks. I'm so excited to see what I can share.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we cover a lot of issues on this show. Really, the show started, um, you know, realizing that there's a lot of service members and veterans out there who have a wide variety of issues, and any number of those issues can snowball into other issues. And finances is a huge part of all of this. And if we can, kind of wrap our head around some of that and get some education benefits, and not have to pay for all of that stuff out of pocket. We earned these 9/11 post 9/11 GI Bill benefits. If we can use some of that and to kind of help ease the burden of some of the education that we go through, to kind of advance ourselves in our careers and our post military life, why not take advantage of those benefits that we've earned? So, really glad to have you here to talk about this stuff and hopefully help some people out with the knowledge that you have on all of this. So, um, can you maybe just start off by talking about some of the differences between managing finances for folks who are currently serving in the military and veterans? Are there really any differences or specific benefits or things like that that are unique to each group? And how can people make the most of the resources that are available to them during the different phases of service?
Yeah, there really are a tremendously large number of differences between the benefits that are available when you are still serving versus the benefits that are available when you get out. And there are some nuances if you're guard and reserve, but generally speaking, active duty families, you have a relatively consistent income. You're receiving BAH, BAS. Um, there are some you may be able to use My CAA for the spouse to pay for some education, tuition assistance for the service member. Post 9/11 GI Bill benefits may be transferred. Once you move over to the veteran side of things, it's a very different ballgame. About the only thing that's the same is the post 9/11 GI Bill. Um, There are benefits that come if the veteran has a disability rating, and some benefits come with a 10% rating, and some benefits require all the way up to a 100% rating. It just depends on the benefit.
Mhm.
There can be, in addition to financial compensation, there can be educational or vocational training. Obviously, everybody has access to the VA home loan. So, yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive package, although obviously it doesn't meet everyone's needs all the time.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I kind of felt like I remembered some of the briefings that we had as getting transitioning out of the military and coming back off of active duty status, and they go over all these resources that are available, and sometimes it feels like you're drinking from a fire hose. There's just so much available to you that if you're not ready to use it right now, sometimes, at least in my case, I felt like I'm just not going to remember all this stuff. It's just so much. Um, are there resources or places like a one central? hub or of information that people can go to and kind of pick through, like, as they're going through the different stages of their military service, from active duty, or maybe their National Guard or reserves, to transitioning to veteran status, where they can go and find this information to help them take advantage of what's available to them.
There are, what's available varies a lot based upon where you are in the process, and sometimes also your status. And
Mhm.
I gotta be honest, if you're turning around and, trying to search out your benefits maybe 2 or 4 or 20 years down the road, you are gonna run into a few more roadblocks because some of those, more readily available services are just not gonna be, available to you.
Right.
But generally speaking, your installation or your branch's family service center, whether it's Airman and Family Readiness or um, Fleet and Family Service Center, they've got people who are frequently willing to help, even if you're not in their wheelhouse. They may not be getting paid to help you, but they might be willing to talk to you anyway. This is often where the informal resources really come into play. People like me, who, a lot of my work is just put up at my own blog, and I'm not the only person. And, if you Google veteran education benefits, you might find something from me. Now, I will give a shout out that the VA website is actually pretty darn good. They make mistakes just like everybody does, but um, it's not a bad website, and I refer to it all the time.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's probably a good first place to start anyways, if you're looking for this type of stuff, because a lot of it does come through the VA umbrella. They have a lot of services and benefits that are available through them. And so, yeah, why not start there and see what they have? But there, like you said, there are other things available maybe outside of that umbrella, that people can also look into as well. But yeah, I guess, starting off with that search on their website would probably be a good first place to go. But, as kind of go through those resources and maybe figure that maybe that's not for you or not available to you, there may be some others. So I guess, don't get discouraged if you go to their website and it's not exactly lining up to what you need. There may be other things out there for you as well. Now, we were talking about kind of the transition period. Um, are there things that people should be doing as they're preparing to transition, as far as the benefits that are available to them while they're still in the service? Are there things that they should be doing to kind of maximize those benefits, so that when they do transition, they've kind of taken advantage of everything that is available to them?
There are so many. I have a list at my website. I'm not trying to flog my website, but that's
No,
just
go
going to
ahead.
happen in this conversation. And it's I have a separate list for retiring and a list for separating, and they are thousands of words long. The big things that people want to make sure that they're doing is, depending on how far you are, you may really want to take advantage of your educational benefits, right? Tuition assistance. If your branch of service has any sort of community college or that type of program, go ahead and do that. If your spouse is eligible, use the MyCAA program. Make sure that GI Bill gets transferred when you still have 4 years of service. That may be the largest thing if people want to transfer their benefits. That 4 years of service obligation is a super big deal. We're potentially talking about more than $100,000 worth of benefits
Yeah.
that they may be restricting themselves if they don't transfer it. The other one is programs like SkillBridge, which is where the Department of Defense will release you to go do an internship with a private company or a government organization while you are still on active duty and you're still getting your active duty pay and benefits. Those programs, I think, perhaps have seen their heyday in the sense that when they very first came out, the Department of Defense and the branches themselves were really generous about
Mhm.
releasing people for 6 months. Um, And since it's been going on for a few years now, there are definitely cutbacks coming in terms of how long you can go do Skill Bridge. Is everybody going to be approved for it? So just be aware of that.
Yeah, when I first heard about SkillBridge, I didn't use it myself. I was National Guard, so that wasn't. I don't think that was a thing that was available to National Guard soldiers. But regardless, when I first heard of it, um, I I thought, wow, this almost sounds too good to be true. Like you get 6 months of um, your time in the service where you can go and work an internship at another job. And I was like, I can't think of any other job that would just let you take 6 months to go off and do something. So, yeah, kinda what you were saying, I do suspect that maybe at some point in the future, some of that might get scaled back a bit. Maybe not quite as long as 6 months or not, but regardless, it's still that's not to discourage anybody from checking it out. It's still a great, program, and I think part of the reason why they put it in is so that the service members who are transitioning out have a smoother transition instead of just flipping the switch from one day you're wearing the uniform, next day you're you know wearing business clothes, going to you know conference rooms and all that kind of stuff. You need to have a bit of a transition period there to kind of help you navigate post military life, right?
Yeah, it is a great program, but there are definitely already changes in the works, and I
Mhm.
foresee that there will be more coming.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so I guess, uh, keep that in mind if you are one of those people who are nearing, eligibility for that and you're maybe, counting on that for, the last few months of your, time in service, that there may be some changes, and it may not be available to the extent that you think it is. So, just kind of keep up on that and pay attention to it as you are approaching that period of your service. Um, so, as we are going through that transition period from military service to civilian life, um, you know, it's a big change. A lot of yeah, people go through identity crises and all these kind of things, but also financially, you went from having a job that, uh, you know, steady paycheck, they were covering your housing and food and all these different things to now you're out in the world and you're on your own. Um, some of the things that the military family should probably consider, I would imagine, probably include, making sure that they have enough money in savings just in case there's a gap in employment at post military service, right? And are there other considerations that they should have going into that transition?
There are so many, and you kind of hit on two of them right there in your comments. First of all, is to have a financial buffer. And what that's going to look like is very different for every situation. If you get out after 4 years and you're going to move home with mom and dad and use your GI Bill and go to college, well, maybe you don't need a very big buffer.
Sure.
But when my husband retired, we had 3 kids in college. No, 3 or 4 kids in college, um, and a very large mortgage. And so, our needs for that buffer were pretty significant.
Yeah.
The other thing is we've all heard the stories about the person who, started their new job on terminal leave. They were double dipping. I have a friend who went to work for Google and is making, I think he's with Google, and is making an absolute ton of money. And this sets some unrealistic expectations because this is not going to be most people's experience.
Right.
A really good rule of thumb is that for every $10,000 in salary you're trying to make, it's going to take about a month to find that job. So if you think you're going to leave the military and make $80,000 a year, you should be planning to be unemployed for 8 months,
Oh,
which is a super hard concept. And it's particularly a hard concept because we do know all those people who got jobs immediately.
mhm.
And you think, well, It's not gonna take me 8 months. Don't be ridiculous, Kate. That's just but that's what the data shows, right? The other thing that the data shows is that the average veteran changes jobs at least once in the first 2 years after they leave the military. And for some people at the 5-year point, they might be on job 3, 4, 5, 6. And having appropriate expectations about how that's gonna unfold really can inform some financial decisions that people make.
Yeah.
If you go out, you buy a house, you get a great job in Waco, Texas, and you buy a house in Waco, Texas, and that job doesn't work out, well, now you're kinda stuck in Waco,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or you've been saving and you really, for a retirement present, want that F-150 that you never bought because it wasn't convenient, it wasn't gonna fit with your lifestyle, but then you hate your first new job and you still have an F-150 payment, right?
Right.
So people need to just have, clear expectations of how long it's gonna take to find a job and how long that job's gonna last. Particularly people who've been in the military for decades, like, it's just inconceivable to them that they might only be in a job for a year, but they might.
Right.
So that's definitely a mindset shift, but from a financial planning perspective, that's super important to keep in mind.
Mhm. Yeah, and to your point, if you're looking for an 80,000 a year job, it may potentially take 8 months to find that job. Um, that is good information to have, because knowing how much money you should have saved up so that way you you can survive for those 8 months without an income, by having savings that you can fall back on. Um, I mean, it's simple math, but you may not think about it. Is like go back and look at your last year's worth of expenses that you have for your household, and figure out how much do I need per month in order to survive for 8 months or 9 months or however long that time period is, because I may need that. And before you get out of the service and separate, you should have that saved up so that way you're able to survive for that time period. Now, does that data that you were talking about, does that shift at all if people start applying for jobs, while they're still in service, like before that transition out to civilian life? Like, let's say I start applying 6 months before I'm 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 scheduled to get out. Would that shorten that to like 2 months after transitioning out, or how does that work?
So, that's a hugely broad brush data, and so it's really very specific, right? If you're
Mhm.
getting out and you've been doing cyber for 20 years, you probably have a pretty good chance of being employed relatively quickly.
Sure.
But there are military specialties that don't have really good civilian translations. And so those people are perhaps having to get some more education or otherwise kind of retrain. Maybe they're going to use the VA's vocational rehabilitate, or what are they calling it now?
Uh, I forget
It's
what they
not
call
voc
it now. I know
rehab
what you're talking
anymore.
about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
readiness education
sure.
program to learn how to do a new skill because maybe their military career just doesn't have a civilian translation.
Mhm. And even the ones that do have a pretty clear civilian translation, like a medic and like a EMS or something like that, like there's a pretty clear um, correlation there between the military and civilian. You may not have the right credentials or training or whatever in order to just step right into that job. You may need to go for additional education or additional training, or I don't know the specifics about it, but I know that there are some differences between jobs like that. So to your point, there may be a period of time where you do need to uh, schedule that to go and take those classes or get that additional training, whatever the case may be. But um, uh, you know, you'll end up having that period of time. So it's useful to do your research and figure out how long is that training going to last, or that extra education. Is it a 4 year degree? Is it a 6 month, uh, you know, turnaround for, whatever training you need? Whatever it is, you got to figure out, how am I going to survive for that period of time, right?
Yeah, it's a different calculation for every person,
Sure.
and it is definitely a good example of it's really about the planning, not about the plan. No plan survives impact. My
Sure.
husband and I had a very large transition fund, and we went through it pretty darn rapidly his first year that he was out. But they were all choices that we made, and we were really thankful to have the opportunity to make those choices because we
Mhm.
had built up that large transition fund. And would we have survived otherwise? Probably just fine, but we would not have been able to do things the way we wanted to.
Yeah. And that gives you that freedom to be able to do things the way you want to, like you just said. Um, yeah, sure. If you had $0 in your savings account and you had nothing as you're transitioning out except for that last paycheck that you got paid, um, yeah, it would be a whole lot more difficult. Could you find another job that maybe isn't your ideal job that can pay the bills just to get by until you find that ideal job? You probably could. Um, but that's not really what you want, right? You want to be able to have that flexibility and freedom to do the things that you want to do in the way that you want to do them, and not be relying on a job that isn't exactly what you were looking for, right?
Yeah. Um, one of the things of the military is you just learn to do what you need to do with what you got.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have other options.
Sure, sure. And like you said, no plan is gonna uh, survive that first impact. Like you're going to have a plan, and something's gonna come up. You're gonna have, medical bills, or the water heater goes, or something's gonna happen. It always does. It's Murphy's law. If it can go wrong, it will. And so, yeah, having that transition fund, if you will, with a little extra thrown in there. Like don't have just enough to have you screaming into the finish line with $0 just about to turn red, but then, oh great, I got this job and now I can start saving again. You still want to have some money in savings because there's always going to be those unexpected things, and so that will help with this transition, because it's hard enough as it is to transition out of the military when you take finances out of the equation. Even if that wasn't an issue, there's still enough going on in that transition that why make it harder? And so, having that fund there that you can rely on to get you through until you do find that job. But even after that first job, like you said, most veterans tend to stay in that first job for about 2 years. So what are you going to do afterwards? And having that plan for the 2 years, 5 years, even 10 years down the road, to figure out, what are your next moves going to be, and you may not know exactly, because y- you you may start working that job, realizing, hey, I hate this, I don't want to work in this field anymore. So what's next? But at least knowing what educational resources are available, and financial and other resources that are available to you, um, will help you uh, kind of figure out how to transition through that, all of those changes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the more you know, the easier it's gonna be, but as you said, there are so many aspects to getting out of the military. It's emotional, you've got a lot of logistical concerns. Really the one you have the most control over is your finances.
Mhm.
You can't really control the emotional side of it. You can't really control the logistical side of it. If your, personnel office is not getting you your DD 214, you can go and yell at them every single day. But at some point, like you can't make that happen.
Yeah.
but you do have the ability to make yourself be financially ready.
Sure. Right. And I think it also comes down to making wise purchasing decisions as well. You were talking about like a home um, in maybe an area that doesn't have a ton of employment options, but you may love the area. But if that job doesn't work out for you, now you're kind of stuck in that area. So making a little more wise purchasing decision as far as where your house is, but even smaller expenses that tend to add up over time, those subscriptions that you forget about and all these other things, there's really no need to continue spending money on all that type of stuff, and really think like, is this something I really need right now? Is this something that I can put off a little delayed gratification maybe, and kind of help yourself out that way so you're not having so much money go out the door, right?
Yeah, leaving the military is a challenging time in the sense that for a lot of people, they feel some freedom to spend some money that they'd been waiting to spend,
Yeah.
particularly in the house buying department. But it's kind of the worst time to do that. Now, that's obviously a broad generalization. Some people leave the military and they've scrimped and saved the whole time, and they've got tons of money in TSP. Maybe they served for 30 or 35 years. They've got low expenses. Their military retirement pay is going to cover, their basic living expenses. So this isn't one size fits all, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, and getting out, we all have different issues, financial issues, and things like that. Even if you're at the same pay rate, if you're in one part of the country versus another, the cost of living is going to be different, and you're going to have different financial needs. But I think one of the things that maybe anyone can take advantage of is the education benefits. Unless you're starting a job straight out of the military and you're making 150 $200,000 a year, or something like that, and you don't have the time for taking those classes and using that education benefit, then that might make sense to just go straight into that work. Um, but for other people, like you were saying before, there are some jobs in the military where they don't have a great correlation to a civilian job. I was an infantryman, and there's really not much of a correlation there, with the civilian world. And so a lot of times you're going to need to use some sort of education benefit. And the post 9/11 GI Bill is one of those resources that we were talking about. Um, that is available for veterans and some eligible family members looking to, um, you know, get into education there, right? But could you provide an overview of how these benefits work, the post 9/11 GI Bill, and who's eligible to use the post 9/11 GI Bill, and how long do the benefits last after leaving the service?
Sure. So the post 9/11 GI Bill is available to anyone who has served more than 90 days since September 2001. Um, Now, if you are Guard or Reserve, how your days count is, a magical mystery formula. It's not really a mystery, but you do have to, just be a little aware of this is going to count, but this isn't going to count
Yeah.
towards your VA benefits. Starting at 90 days, you have a percentage of the GI Bill available to you. And after 3 years, you've earned all of, 100% of the 36 months of the GI Bill. I'm just going to say super quickly that when you say a percentage, 50% of 36 months, people go, oh, so I have 18 months of benefits. Nope, has to be different, right? You have 36 months of 50% benefits. Magic math.
Ah,
Um, but it is available to the veterans themselves. And then, depending on the situation, they may have been able to transfer those benefits to a spouse or child. And that has to happen while you're serving because there is a service obligation that comes with the transfer of benefits.
okay.
So once those benefits, if whether it's the veteran using them themselves or if they've been properly transferred to a family member and the service obligation has been met, then the benefits can be used. There's slightly different rules, three sets of rules actually. For spouses, for the veterans and the spouses, there's either a 15-year limit if they got out of the military.
Mhm.
Hold on or before January 1st, 2013. If you're going to use this rule, go double check that I just told you the right date. Um, After that date, there is no expiration for the veteran or the spouse's benefits. That was a bill called the Forever GI Bill.
Okay.
For children, there is an age limitation. They can only use it up to age 26 unless there are some certain situations. If they serve in the military themselves, they may be able to use it a little bit longer. If there are some extremely extenuating circumstances, just count on 26 as being the age cutoff for kids to use the benefits.
Okay. Yeah, and that is good to know too because, like you said, there's some service requirements, and if you don't do things while you're still in the service, then you may not be able to take full advantage of all those benefits by transferring it to a spouse or a child or whatever. So, you know, yeah, don't just leave the service and expect everything to be available to you. You probably want to do a little research and say, does it make sense to be able to transfer it to a spouse or a child before you leave the service? Which, like you were saying, when your husband left the service, you had kids in college, and that's a huge expense. If you were, able to transfer some of that post 9/11 GI Bill to your children, that would help, possibly alleviate some of those expenses, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is, you could do a whole show on post 9/11 GI Bill strategy, but it is certainly one of the resources in your pocket. And if
Hmm.
you've, transferred at the right time in your career and done your service obligation, it can be a tremendous tool to make the transition process easier because a lot of people, just due to the nature of the timing of life, are leaving the military either while they have kids in college or maybe kids that are, preparing to go to school. So
Right.
it is a huge tool in your toolkit.
Yeah, and can cover, like you said, quite a bit of the expenses. Are there other things outside of tuition that the post 9/11 GI Bill covers?
Yes. So tuition, the post 9/11 JI bill can cover some or all of tuition, depending on the school and how much it costs. It also offers a monthly housing allowance that is similar to BAH, and it is based on the location of the school. And this is can be a tremendous benefit. One of my kids went to school in New York, and if we'd use the GI Bill for her, right, the housing allowance that it's based on is thousands of dollars a month.
Sure.
Um, there's also a books allowance. Those are the three big ones: a books
Mhm.
allowance, housing allowance, and then the tuition payments. There are also a few smaller benefits that some people do use. If you are coming from an extraordinarily remote location, there's a small payment to help you, a transportation benefit. Are payments for tutoring. If you're struggling with a particular class and you're utilizing VA education benefits, you can perhaps get the VA to pay for tutoring for you. There are also sometimes individual colleges will have programs. You may be able to get a work study job through the VA office, not through the regular work study office, little things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, and you mentioned books as one of the costs that is one of the big costs that gets covered, and for folks who haven't had the had the privilege of dealing with college bookstores and buying these books for all the classes that they are, gonna be taking, um, they're expensive. They are
They are.
super expensive, and people are thinking, "Oh, how much could a book be?" I mean, this is 20 years ago now, but I was in college. I had books that were 4 or $500 sometimes. It was stupid how expensive some of these books were. So yeah, definitely use that benefit. It can definitely, save you quite a bit of money, I bet. 'Cause I don't know how they get away with charging that much money for those books, but they do. I don't get it. Um, so any other benefits or resources that folks should be aware of at this point?
The educational benefit is really, kind of the big one, right, in most people's minds, and from a practical standpoint, it is the big one.
Yeah.
Whether it's for the service member or their spouse to get an education or for their family members. I will throw out there that I talk to a lot of clients who are really determined to save their GI Bill for their kids.
Mhm.
And I certainly understand, where that's coming from. That makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
when you just are looking at it from the surface. What I encourage them to do is just to think critically about what type of impact using those GI Bill benefits would make if mom or dad used them, or
Mhm.
mom, or whatever the family
Sure.
situation may be. If let's say one of the parents is an RN and they use this to go get their BSN and they earn another $30,000 a year every year for the rest of their working life, that's probably a bigger benefit to that family than saving the GI Bill for a kid.
Right. Right.
So, um, it's all a cost benefit analysis of how much is this going to pay, and what am I giving up? What are my other resources to pay for school at this point in time? But certainly saving it isn't always the best idea. Often it is. It just every situation is different.
That's right. I was just gonna say, it's that classic, "Well, it depends," kinda answer, and it's not, not to say, that you can't find a definitive answer for whatever your situation is, but your situation may be different from the next person and the next person, so, it's just a matter of, really figuring out what makes the most sense for you. Like you said, if you can make $30,000 a year more, uh, for ever, you know, um, you're probably gonna be in a better place by doing that if you use the benefits and then save some of that 30,000, to pay for your children's education, than you would be if you didn't use it. You made 30,000 less each year, and then just use the GI Bill for that child, once when they got into college, because like you said, it could be, $100,000 or so, um, of benefits, but you would make that in a little over 3 years if you were working and earn that. So, the lifetime of a child before they start going to school could be, 18 years or so. Multiply that by the 30,000, that's a big chunk of change that you're talking about, right?
It is.
Yeah.
So, another thing I would encourage people to do, in addition to educational benefits, is just be aware that there are so many nonprofit organizations out there that want to help veterans make a transition. There are people to help you rewrite your resume, to practice interviewing techniques, to work
Mhm.
on your LinkedIn profile, to connect you to a mentor. Some hotel chains will give you points to use to go to interviews. There are charities that will help you buy clothes, to get a
Sure.
suit at a reduced rate. So, wherever you are in your transition journey, if you have a need that you think there might be somebody out there who can help you with, hop on the internet and type in suits for transitioning veterans. And you'll be amazed at the number of resources that are out there and organizations that really do, want to help support you as much as they can.
I would actually, kind of amend a little bit of what you just said there, uh, and you said, if you think there's an organization out there that might be able to help, I would say even if you don't think there's an
Good
organization out
point.
there, that search for it anyways, because there's probably someone out there, and they probably are, looking to help people just like you, with any number of things. Like you said, suits for transitioning veterans, or that type of thing, or points for a hotel stay to, go to a job interview. Uh, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's just not something that would have occurred to me. But what the hell? Give it a search. What are you gonna lose? Like, a couple minutes of your time? Like, just do a search and try to see if, any of these companies out there can help you out. And, the thing is, they want to help. That's what I wanna get across to the veterans out there who feel like, "Oh, I don't wanna be a burden to these people," or, whatever. It's like, no, they are doing this because they want to help you. You're not a burden. You're not, putting anyone out or anything like that. They're, a lot of times, especially like these hotel chains, um, they have empty rooms anyways. So it's not like you're really putting them out much by, spending the night in one of their hotels. So, they're willing to help you out. Might as well take advantage of that offer and use it to, benefit you and your career and your financial future, right?
Yeah, I talk to a lot of veterans who are really struggling with transition, and certainly not all of the time, but some of the time, they are just not utilizing the tools that are out there, right?
Yeah,
They're not getting practice with interviewing techniques. That there's a nonprofit out there that there are more than one that will help you practice your interviewing techniques.
right.
Building their network, because we all know that most jobs come from networking. They don't come from sending out resumes.
Yeah,
So take advantage of all of these many organizations that exist for the sole purpose of helping veterans transition.
perfect. Yeah. You mentioned your website, earlier, but you didn't tell folks where they can go to find the website. Tell us,
Good
where they
point.
can go to find more information about what you do and some of the resources that you were talking about.
Sure. So my website is katehorrell.com, two R's, two L's. I imagine you'll drop it in the show notes
Yep,
somewhere.
it will be
And
there.
in addition to just general articles about, hey, here's how get the Department of Defense to pay for you to ship your second car when you move, or something like that, I have a pretty comprehensive transition checklist, and I have a pretty comprehensive separation checklist. There's also a PCSing checklist to make sure you have the best move that you can possibly have. And supposed to be finished in 2 weeks, but absolutely not going to be finished in 2 weeks, is my GI Bill book.
Okay.
So people can keep their eyes out there, um, for whenever that actually gets done.
Excellent. And by the time this episode comes out, hopefully that gives you a few more, weeks to get that out. But if it's not out, I'm sure you can reach out and find out more about when that'll be available. So, we'll definitely, like you said, we'll have the link to your website in the show notes. Definitely, copy that link down, bookmark it, whatever you want to do, and use those resources that are available in there. Um, Before we wrap up this show, I always like to end an episode with a little bit of humor. Just sometimes, some of the topics, not today so much, but some of the topics could be a little bit heavy for some folks. And, I'd like to put a reliable smile on people's faces, even if they're laughing at me because the joke is so corny. I don't really care. That's fine. Um, so before we wrap this episode up, I'm going to drop a quick joke. Hopefully, makes folks laugh. Let's see. So a guy's getting out of the shower just as his wife is finishing up with her shower, and the doorbell rings. So the wife quickly wraps herself in a towel, runs downstairs, and she opens the door. There is their next door neighbor, Bob. And before she says a word, Bob says to her, "I will give you $800 to drop that towel." And after thinking for a moment, the woman drops her towel and stands naked in front of Bob. And a few seconds later, Bob hands her $800 and leaves. And the woman wraps back up in the towel, goes back upstairs. When she gets to the bathroom, her husband says, "Oh, so who was at the door?" And she goes, "Oh, it was Bob, the next door neighbor." And he goes, "Oh, great. Did he say anything about the $800 he owes me?"
Okay, that was pretty funny.
At least it put a smile on one person's face, so I thought it was pretty good. But hopefully, other folks out there laughed as well, um, and also check out those show notes again for the resources. I'll put some of the other things in there that we talked about during the show, like links to the VA website and the post 9/11 GI Bill and Skill Bridge and other things like that. So for the listeners, definitely check out the show notes. And I want to thank you again, Kate, for taking the time to come on and share your knowledge and everything with us that you did today. So thank you.
It was great being here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to support the show, please check out Scott's book, Surviving Son, on Amazon. All of the sales from that book go directly back into this podcast and work to help veterans in need. You can also follow the Drive On podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.